finished this book. Nola Hopkinson's Sister Mine. But this book I gave 1 star. So if you love this author, you probably want to exit now, cause I just ain't got time. Okay, I'm just telling you. I can only think for myself. Okay, I only work with the mind God gave me, and I didn't even want to make this video. Now let me read the synopsis. So first, I checked this out at the library, so it's all good. So, we'd have to be cut free of our mother's wounds. She'd never have been able to push the two-headed sport that was me and Abby out the usual way. Abby and I were fused, you see, conjoined twins. Abby's head, torso, and left arm protruded from my chest. But here's the real kicker. Abby had the magic, I didn't. Far as the family was concerned, Abby was one of them, though cursed, as I was, with the tragic flaw of mortality. Now Now adults, Makeda and Abby still share their childhood home. The surgery to separate the two girls gave Abby a permanent limp, but left Makeda with what feels like an even worse deformity, no mojo. The daughters of a celestial demigod and a human woman, Makeda and Abby were raised by their magical father, the god of growing things, a highly unusual childhood that made them extremely close. Ever since Abby's magical talent began to develop, though, in the form of an unearthly singing voice, the sisters have become increasingly distant. Today, Makeda has decided it's high time to move out and make her own life among the other non-magical clay picking. Clay picking is a reference, I want to say, to the Bible as it regards, we as humans were formed out of clay. After all, she's one of them. In cheerful rest, a rundown warehouse space, Makeda finds exactly what she's been looking for, an opportunity to live apart from Abby and begin building her own independent life. There's even a resident band led by the charismatic and attractive building superintendent. But when her father goes missing, Makeda will have to discover her own talent and reconcile with Abby if she's to have a hope of saving him. That sounds like, this sounds pretty dysphoria, right? Am I even saying that right? Girl, you know I'm crazy as hell. So anyway, at the end of the day, I gave this book 1 star. For whatever the author was trying to do with it, it was not resonating with me at all. It was not resonating or translating with me. But let me say this resoundingly. I want to get this out first, that if the author would remove the curse words, particularly a lot of maybe a moderate amount of F-bombs from the book, and remove the scenes of the incest between the two twins that comes about. This book, and this is no shade, but this book would have probably been better suited as a young adult novel. Now I say that because the main protagonist, Makeda, it is told in the first person, occasionally switches into third, which I don't want to get into that because it was a big letdown. But Makeda, the main protagonist, despite being in her early 20s, which we all have been there, and yes, there is some juvenile tendencies in that, but for all intents and purposes, she was a hot-ass juvenile of a mess. Miss Girl got on my damn nerves. Got on it. She threw a lot of tantrums, like a child, like a teenager, I guess. No shade to teenagers, because we all been there too. But she threw a lot of tantrums. She had the tendency to, when she got mad and lashed out, she would tell people to shut the F up. She told her sister that. She told some other folks that. Child, I was like, somebody need to whoop her ass. It did. She just read like a young, I don't know shade, but she read like a young adult character. She read like a character who was coming out of puberty, as opposed to all these other fantastical things that was related to her in her life, being half a quarter, maybe demigod, half demigod or whatever. But that's kind of where it led. She read like a juvenile. So in essence, it was coming of age story. That was really unfortunate because with all of the magical elements, I made some notes here because I kept forgetting what I was trying to say. But what I was going to say, with all the magical elements and high fantasy, the Caribbean flavor, because you're dealing with, like, their father was like I said, a demigod who controlled nature, basically. The mother was what you would consider a handmaiden to that demigod. One of their grandmothers was the god of the ocean. They had an aunt who was lightning and a storm. Then they have the most prominent of these relatives that came about was their uncle, who was the god of death. All right, he was death. So what I'm saying, my point is that with all of the fantasy elements going on, and here's his really juvenile character, I suffered through this book because I felt like there was no one there to ground these fantasy elements in this experience for me as a reader. It was frustrating living through this world, through this high-strung character who, girl, was always throwing a damn tantrum at every corner. And I think that was probably one of the biggest reasons that I suffered through this book, because I couldn't even grasp all of the fantasy elements because they were so damn abstract for the sake of being abstract that hell, none of it translated to me. And it sucked even more because the character wasn't helping me as the reader understand what this world. And I don't mean she had to spell it out, but like I said, we needed a mature character to ground this story down, because it went anywhere and everywhere. It was so unhinged to me. An example, and this is probably like one of the most minute examples that I can share in this video. At one point, my hand's shaking. At one point, she was moving into her new apartment. The superintendent, as the book spoke of, he let her borrow one of his mini fridges, which I think that the author forgot that was the case there, because it was explained earlier, but for whatever reason, she ended up with it without him really. Put it this way: while she was moving in, she had it in there. But she was weary about him helping her move her furniture into her apartment. Girl, listen, I know it sounds crazy. I'm not crazy. I know I'm crazy, but I ain't that damn crazy. I know what I read. But my point is that, so in the deep freezer, I wish I had kept this page here. I really wish I had marked it. In the deep freezer, this is so minute, but this is what I'm talking about. In the deep freezer, she put two pairs of panties in Ziploc bags and put it in the freezer. And then he ended up taking beer or putting it in the freezer or the refrigerator, and he saw them, and he asked her in the apartment, why you got two pairs of your panties? Was it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday panties, or maybe just Saturday and Sunday, in Ziploc bags inside of your refrigerator? And she was like, oh, because in Ontario, they're in Canada, the summers are sweltering and hot. And my uncle always told me that when it gets so hot, that the best thing you can do is take out a pair of panties out of your refrigerator and slip them on as when you're sleeping through the night. Girl, why the next scene over, she was complaining about how cold it was outside. And she was running outside through freezing rain, gathering herself to go to I can't give that spoiler away, but she was gathering herself, running through the freezing rain. Like, I know y'all may be like, that don't mean nothing and it's so minute, but to me, I see stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, when I'm reading, I'm paying attention, and I'm like, why waste that space for that conversation? You know what I mean? With all this going on in this book, why lend that little antidote to this conversation? It wasn't relevant. And that's an example. A lot of it just felt like nothing was really relevant to the story. Nothing was really grounded in it. Like, on the surface, I got it. These two girls, one wanted to separate herself from her other because, sibling rivalry, you can put that in there. And, the father went missing, who was a demigod, and they got but why waste that space for that little antidote. We didn't need to know that. We didn't need to know that. Not that it was invasive, but it's just like a lot of that goes on. And I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, maybe her aunts, because they control the weather, maybe something about that is going to take place. And no, the further you read, she gets into an argument with her sister because she crafted some kind of Afghan or something with some lights in. Girl, she was on a carpet that was flying. But she got into it with her sister, and her sister didn't like this damn carpet, so she told her to throw it away, and she threw a fit, and they made her. I should have went to Walmart and bought some tabs, because it would have been better if I gave y'all the receipts. But this book, it read like somebody smoking a blunt, and I'm catching the fever from it secondhand through a puffy cloud of weed smoke. Really, I'm really disappointed. I really am. But I'm still gonna try to read Brown Girl in the Ring. But this book, it was abstract for the sake of being abstract, but absolutely nothing translated. On the surface, I got it, but underneath all that, it was a hot mess.